Welcome to Rooted to Thrive, conversations to elevate our humanity. I'm your host, Rochelle Peterson Ansari, Professor P for short. This is your podcast sanctuary for cultivating mindsets and skills to elevate our shared humanity. We're taking a deep dive into practical strategies to evolve as anti-racist, culturally competent, and inclusive individuals and leaders. In each episode, we're bringing you real-world examples and actionable takeaways. We're going to talk about personal growth, fostering connection, and creating positive change that dismantles systemic barriers and creates environments where all of us are valued, empowered, and activate our collective power. This is Rooted to Thrive. Welcome and welcome back to Rooted to Thrive, Conversations to Elevate Our Humanity podcast. I am your host, Rochelle Peterson Ansari, aka Professor P. I am thrilled today. I know I say that every time, but I am. I am thrilled to have Dr. Angela Campbell, who is actually the CEO and founder of Presence Power for Success. And she's actually a former vice president of mission, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a chief mission officer at Cabrini University in Pennsylvania. So, Angela, I am so honored to have you joining us today, just to share a little bit of the light that you shared with others and with me over the years. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, Rochelle. I am so thankful that you've invited me to have this conversation with you
That's
today. I'm feeling great.
that's exciting. And so, I'm glad that you're here to talk about something that is really important to a whole lot of people, and also something that I learned was important to me later in life. So I have my pen and paper. I got the notes on my phone. I'm ready to take copious notes for this topic: strategies of self-care for DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion leaders. So if you could, just to get started, share a little bit about your background and how you became involved in this work.
Sure. First of all, arriving at self-care for those of us that care about social justice and equity and inclusion and creating cultures of belonging,
Mm.
there's no topic more important than what we're doing together right now. So my journey really began without realizing that I was on a journey. It just began with realizing that, you know, growing up, I went to predominantly white Catholic elementary school, from preschool all the way through middle school.
Mhm.
And while I am immensely appreciative, right, of the education, it was formidable, solid education in terms of skill building and preparation for the world that exists.
Mhm.
It also brought challenges around my racial identity and the things that I was noticing and experiencing as a child.
Okay.
I'm also grateful for those challenges because it set me off in a cycle of thinking deeply. It also put me in a situation where I felt that I was in the background of life. I was in the background of other people who didn't look like me, who were in the foreground of life, whether that was in the classroom or outside the classroom. And I wanted to know why. And being in the background was probably also a function of my personality, but it was also what I thought was my place in that hierarchy.
Hmm.
And I wanted to know why.
Mm.
So my journey really started with a lot of queries. Why, daddy? Why? Why, mommy? Why? You know, like many of us, right? We're asking our parents, we're asking the people around us who we trust and who we feel safe with, why are things the way they are?
Yes.
And what's my role in it? What's my place in it? So that's kind of, in a way, my origin story, um, that I'm thankful not thankful for the inequities or the injustice or the racism that I experienced. But without those experiences, I would not have grown into someone who cared and thought deeply about these same issues, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. It also made me think, so then if you don't have those challenges, you might less likely be someone who will think about them, right? It might not be at the top of mind if you, and I say might not, right, be top of mind if you did not experience those challenges.
Right.
Right? This is not a us and them conversation. It's just a reality, right? Like we understand that in areas of life where we call it privilege, right? Where we have privileges, we often don't see things
Right.
that we are experiencing. They're in our blind spots. But when we feel like we were in the background where others were in the foreground, it's easier to see it.
Yeah.
Okay. I love it. Thank you. I love the way you describe that. Yes. So, as we talk about, well, I want you to just start talking to us about self-care, right? Self-care for DEI leaders. You said people who are in justice work, social justice work, DEI work, there is no more important topic.
There is no more important topic than self-care. And so it leads us to ask a couple of questions.
Yes.
Who is the self that I need to be caring about?
Mm.
Who am I? And what do I deserve?
Mm.
And how can I show up as the best version of myself in space and in places?
Mm.
Those questions, again, I'm always kind of set off by questions. Well, I'm asking myself these questions,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there could be a version of me that's a role. Oh, I'm director such and such, vice president, so and so, a role. Right?
Uh-huh.
And all of us are in roles. And in those roles, some of us wear masks. Some of us don't know that they're wearing masks, but usually there is some kind of mask wearing in a role that is being played.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The first aspect of self-care, I think, for those of us in roles, is to recognize that we're in roles. And caring for ourselves in a role is a lot harder than caring for the essence of who we are, that is indestructible, eternal. There is a core in every human, and you know this being a spiritual person, that we have to get to. And I say that because in my role as former vice president of mission and DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and chief mission officer, those roles gave me a sense of identity, a sense of purpose, a direction, very good sense of like, this is what I'm here to do for others. And in that journey that I've been on, I would say for the past 3 years, it also revealed to me that there is a disconnect many times in these roles, in these institutions in society. And I'm not disparaging those roles are important. Those institutions, the institutions are important. But who are we caring for? The first order, I would say, of business is to know the deep I, who I am beneath the forms, beneath the role,
Mm-hmm.
that part of me that's deeply connected to you, Rochelle, that's deeply connected to my students and everyone else, my colleagues. And while I was in my role, I got a revelation that this mission and DEI work has to be connected and it has to go deeper. We are spiritual beings having a human experience, not my quote, but you've heard that quote before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's time to connect the equity and inclusion work to the spiritual work. And by doing that, we then have the roots to thrive holistically. And I'll just pause there. I know that was a
Okay.
lot.
Yeah, that was a lot, but I love it. Yes, keep it going. I was like, okay, who is this self? And I'm taken care of, right? Who am I beneath the forms and
Mhm.
these tasks, right, that I perform in service to others? What do I deserve really stood out to me. And I'll say the reason why that stood out is because that has been more of a recent revelation for myself. I think a lot of people who put justice at the forefront, right, however we came to the work, do often look outside of ourselves and not look at what we need, right? What we need to replenish, what we need to keep going. We can still do good work, but many of us are hobbling when that good work. And imagine what we could potentially do when we literally take care of ourselves first, or as some people say, put your mask on first or fill your cup, right? Because you can't give from a half full cup. It has to be overflowing for you
That's
to
right.
get from your overflow.
That's right.
Yes, right? Okay. And so that, what do I deserve? I will admit it is not a question I asked myself for many, many, many years. And I was doing this kind of work, working for the justice of historically marginalized students for over 36 years. So when I'd like you to talk about, what what do I deserve, right? Like, do you connect that to having boundaries? Do you connect that? What do you connect what you deserve to, right? Like, what do you connect that to for our listeners? Like, break it down for us.
Yeah, yeah. We deserve space.
Mm, okay.
We deserve space to contemplate on who we are, on what we want, on what we need personally,
Mm-hmm,
outside of the role.
mm-hmm,
Because while we're inside the role, it's hard to see that.
mm-hmm,
We can only see, usually in a role, performance, how we're supposed to show up in someone else's space. But how about our own space? How about creating that space within ourselves to be free, to be honest, to be really honest about what we really want and how we want to live, how we want to give our gifts, hone our gifts, strengthen them, right? So that when we're showing up, we can give them fully and without fear, insecurity, and anxiety.
mm-hmm.
Um, and I know, at some point we'll talk about that impetus really inspired me to create
Okay.
my LLC called Presence Power for Success. During the year in which I knew that Cabrini University was closing, I was blessed to be able to stay in my position. And while I was in that position, I had time, I had space. While I was caring for students, yes, my number one priority, because of the exigency of the closure, was
Right.
Angela Campbell.
All right now.
But my circumstances forced me into evolving beyond the role
Okay.
because the role was no more.
Right.
So the rest was, I knew what the near future was going to be, the elimination of that role.
Right.
I had a whole year to be in it, but not of it, in a sense.
Mm, okay.
I mean, what a great analogy for like what it means
Yes.
for to be in the world, but not of it.
Yes.
And I was able to actually be more present in it than I was before without the connection and identity connected to it, the ego around it. and not to say, ego is this terrible thing, but it can sabotage our purpose.
Okay. Okay.
So I was in a situation where I had to wrestle with some things within myself that were really good things to wrestle with. And I could bloom where I was planted, knowing that I only had a limited amount of time to do what I needed to do and to switch the priorities from outside of myself to deeply inside myself. And while I was going deeper inwardly, I was getting revelations. I was doing a lot of reading. I was doing a lot of spiritual readings, reading the Bible, reading Eckhart Tolle's work, reading across spiritual traditions. And I've always been a spiritual seeker, so that wasn't new to me, but I was able to go deeper into it for me.
Yes.
And that was my literal self-care over
Yes.
this year.
Oh, wow.
And I started the LLC because I got the revelation around my internal and external purpose, my primary purpose and my secondary purpose. My primary purpose is to awaken, be the best version of myself in the world, to shine my light as bright as I can, like you, Rochelle, my kindred sister, to shine our light in the world, to awaken other people and bring them out of darkness now,
Yes.
in the here and now, right?
Yes. Yes.
Not
Yes.
in a utopian dream about the future. I'm not no disparaging anything about the future. I'm just saying
Mhm.
it's here and now. It's every moment, it's every breath I take, every step that I make. It's literally when I learned about presence power, which is a quote from Eckhart Tolle, that set it off. I was like, oh, I can be free right now. I don't have to wait for something to happen. I don't need a new person to follow.
Uh,
I don't
right.
need I have, and you and everyone else who's listening to you, we have everything that we need right now,
Yes, we do.
deep within ourselves.
Exactly. Exactly. I used to say that, uh, you know, one of the ways that I perceive my teaching, my mentoring, right, is that I'm always approaching people as if they have everything that they need.
Mhm,
I've had the opportunity to just be a guide on the side, a
mhm,
facilitator, right? Everybody doesn't have that skill set, but I do. And and
mhm,
and I honor that you have in you what you need, right? You're not an empty vessel. That's why I don't see
mhm,
students like teaching students, right? Is not, I never saw them as these people I have to fill with information. And I'm often positioning myself and them and in our learning space that I had control over, when I was in a classroom to pull it out of them. There's nothing, maybe it's just me. Maybe, this is my nerdiness. There is nothing like seeing that aha moment, right? Like that, when people just get it for themselves.
right.
Now, I think you have to get it for yourself. And that's what I hear you saying, right? You
Absolutely.
have to get it for yourself. I'm also hearing you say that when you step back and look internally, everything on the outside worked better as well. Like you were of better service. You look internally. Can you give us an example of what that might look like in the everyday experience of a person?
Absolutely. And this links to self-care,
Okay.
right? So there is a spiritual principle of your outer world is a reflection of your inner world.
Okay.
So when I go within myself and I find peace and confidence, my outer world begins to look like, for example, my outer world could look like my school is closing. This is a terrible thing. Why is this happening? Why is that happening? Right? And you can see the stress on my face even as I talk about it. Things begin to be restricted.
Hmm.
There's resistance. negativity. From my inner world of knowing that there is peace and all is well, truly, all is well within my soul and all is well outside of me too. All I need to do is look for the gift and the opportunities that exist in every situation. So then outside of me, I'm looking at students who need to feel shored up as their life is being disrupted, and for them to say, hey, you know what? I really appreciate the time that I've had, however much time I've had at Cabrini University. I'm thankful for it. And I'm most thankful that I'm talking to you.
Yes.
And I've had students say that to me. And I've said to students, you are my why and my reason. And I'm so thankful to be here with you because you are helping me to grow. My children, another example. I tell my children, they have helped me to become a better human being, a more real and authentic human being. I have grown because of their existence. I am who I am because of them. And so to move that outwardly to those in the world, to everyone, what kind of world would we have, Rochelle, seriously, if more of us actually awaken to the reality that each and every one of us are really the light? We're what we're looking for in other people. We can bring that and be that.
We are the light that we are looking for in other people. I love it. I absolutely love it. I want to sit with that for a second, right? Because many of us aren't, well, I think in Western culture, right, that is not a dominant perspective. It's not a dominant value. Now, we may have learned that in many different circles, more spiritual and religious circles. We might be taught that, right? Really, but we don't internalize it in our behavior. Because then what we see out in the world, right? We see a lot of people debating. We see a lot of people debating each other instead of dialogue. We see a lot of people being individualistic, and yes, and particularly in U.S. American culture, we are encouraged to be individualistic and competitive, right? And hierarchical. We're not encouraged to ask these questions. Who is this self? And to try to be the light that we want, right? Like try to be the light to others that we want.
Right.
I wonder, so you said that you were doing a lot of reading and studying. Where does that perspective come from? Like, can you point to any particular teaching or way of living in any culture?
I do believe that the root, the essence of most spiritual teachings, Eastern, Western, African, and traditional, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, I do believe that the essence of also Islam, Sufism, Christian mystics, Buddhism, and you look at the essence, the essential core teachings across the religions, you will find common threads that run through them that help us to know what is real, to help us to know, to go within, to know what is right for ourselves, to know that we have a oneness and a shared humanity. And Native American, indigenous teachings,
Yes.
Many even of the principles of Ma'at and African-centered principles, certainly. You see, even in Western, some of the, not all of, but even in some of the Western philosophers, you'll see modern teachers who have also gone back and are synthesizing the ancient teachings and representing them, right? So you could go to a lot of different places and you'll find those same kernels. I'm a little hesitant to kind of do a lot of shout outs. I gave one earlier.
Mhm.
But if one is seeking, one will find, certainly. There's no doubt about it.
Right.
One could go into one of the things I'll say this about why I do enjoy Eckhart Tolle's teachings, which he acknowledges has come from all of the ancient, mostly Hindu, Buddhist, and Christian mystics, but he will also acknowledge others. But what I do appreciate is he says you don't have to go to any further than your own tradition.
Right.
His teachings help people to go deeper in what you say you believe. Even for people that are agnostic and atheists, you have a core set
Mhm.
of values, right? Humanistic values, right? Or values around preserving the earth
Yes.
that can take one into being a richer, more authentic human being. So I'm writing right now a book called Presence Power. Not sure what the rest of the title is going to be, but I know I'm going to focus on articulating presence power principles.
Mm.
And
Okay.
some of the ones that I talked about with you today will be in that book. And I feel called to articulate that. Again, the term presence power came out of Eckhart Tolle's work, The Power of Now, in A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose. And I was very inspired by reading his work. So that's a wonderful place to start, honestly.
Okay.
But one could go and read the scriptures, Judaism, Islam, again, Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, any of those religions, if you go to the essence of them, you're finding the same things.
Yeah.
How are we supposed to treat ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and others? And self-care,
Mm-hmm.
as we both know, really begins with going within
Yes.
and finding that we are worthy of having those safe boundaries for ourselves, speaking truth to the powers that be,
Mm.
and trusting that what is right for us is happening to and for us and with us.
Yes. So you said having good boundaries. You said speaking truth to power. I wanna go a little deeper on speaking truth to power.
Let's do it.
Yes, right? Because I've talked to other people, we'll call it, conflict, right? Like conflict is a challenge in our culture. And I find speaking truth to power somehow equates to conflict, right? I don't know that you define it that way, but it equates to conflict. And it's something that I would say typically in US American culture, we have been conditioned to avoid to an extent. Now, you wouldn't be able to tell by the way people talk to each other on social media, but I think that made people feel a little more emboldened to do it because they're not kind of face to face with a human, right? But it still elevated something at a core that we weren't seeking connection, right? We're just seeking to be right, right? Speaking truth to power over the many decades pre-social media, through to today, speaking truth to power has been challenging for people. Yes. And I find that it's challenging. So some people avoid it, but then others don't do it well when they do it, right? Like they don't do it effectively. And I wanted to hear, right? Okay, so I wanted to hear a little more about like how this connection to self-care helps one more effectively speak truth to power so that get the
Mm-hmm,
results that we're looking
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think it's important for us to recognize that we can be self-controlled.
for. Okay.
Now, we hear self-control, but I really mean it in a specific context of What you think and what you feel and how you react to my truth is your business.
Okay.
My business is to express to you with care and in love for both of us and for our institution. I'm speaking truth to the power, to the decision maker, because what I'm experiencing or the truth that is revealed to me can create space for other people to have freedom, equity, feel more included, have a sense of belonging. I'm telling the powers that be what I've been gifted with, whether that's discernment around equity issues, which I've been blessed with that. And so if I give you advisement, or if I ask for something that I believe my team needs, or that the institution needs, or that the students need, I'm doing it out of a spirit of humility, of confidence, because I actually believe that this is what we need. And so I'm not attached to the outcome anymore. I used to be attached to the outcome, and that's where the emotions come.
Okay.
I'm just saying this is the evidence, these are the facts, or this is what my expertise brings to bear on the issue. The person in power who is making the decision, I'm inviting them into an opportunity to look at it using my lens. I'm trying to help tweak their lens to see the situation. All it is an opportunity. You can bring a horse to drink, to the water, but you can't make them drink.
Right.
So
If
the decision maker decides to go in a different direction, okay. I have been working on, in terms of self-care, not allowing the outcome of our work and our purpose to determine our emotional state.
Yes.
I am self-controlled. I am in control of my emotional state. I get to choose. Remember Viktor Frankl was talking about the one thing that humanity has is the power to choose their attitude in any situation. That is essential for self-care. You have the power to choose your emotional state. And I'll tell you something kind of funny. I was watching on Netflix, Love is Blind. Okay. And in one of the episodes, there was a young man who, his name is Milton, it's on public show. So he said, I will not let anything give me a negative perspective. And I was like, pause. I wrote it down. I will not let anything, anyone, any condition give me a negative perspective. That's so empowering.
Yes.
And I think that's important for leaders, for educators, for DEI professionals, that we can last a lot longer if we learn to manage our inner world.
Yes.
Last thing I'll say is when I have done this, believe it or not, the outer world begins to reflect it. I've had leaders who in another circumstance had said no, or we won't support. And in another circumstances where I'm in alignment with my inner being, with the Christ within, it altered the outer world. And then that leader saying, oh, Angela, I didn't think of it that way. I appreciate you telling me that. I appreciate you sharing that with me. So I think it's something for us to play with.
Yes. And I thank you so much for saying that, because when I had the recent shifting, right, of my outer world, it was after I literally had a breakthrough around the fact that I did not need the approval of others.
There it is.
This world told me for years, in multiple identities that I value, had to be accepted by others. And it wasn't until I got that revelation, and yes, mine came from my own spiritual journey, right? Like I literally was working on being more disciplined, and I was like, why not start with my devotion? Right. And in that time, and the practices that I put in place, I got the revelation, Rochelle, literally over 50 years. Well, maybe not consciously when I was a baby, but you know, the majority of 50 some odd years, you have been trying to get approval from others. As even when I would say that, oh, I don't let that, I don't let X, Y, and Z affect me or affect how I feel. I still was conditioned by people who told me, you have to work 10 times harder to have recognition. You have to do and be a certain way as a woman to be accepted by some other group of people or even other women, right? I mean, like I could go on with the multiple ways I internalized this message that I had to like my worth dictated by the approval of people outside of me and my higher being. When I got that, I mean, I saw changes not just in my work life, in my personal life, right? Like with my spouse. There are things I will say, I don't think people change other people, right? But you could have a stance where you give up on people, right? You say, oh, they're too old, they're not going to change, but they can. Seen it happen. I've seen change happen in my environment after I changed internally. I reframed and everybody else stood in agreement. They didn't really have a choice.
Stood in agreement.
I appreciate it. I really appreciate what you just said. And you have a message that all of us need to hear. So you need to hurry up and write that book.
I
I mean,
do.
you know, as quickly as you can, but get that thing, birth that thing so that we can have it in the world and have our God, right? Another God, right? Because I don't think that our learning comes from one place, but so that we have another guide from someone who is actually doing that work for themselves. Yes.
Amen.
Amen. I know, right? Nothing else to say, but amen. And does help us accept, right, life seasons and cycles in a very different way. And again, if we want other people to thrive, we need to thrive first. Did I capture that accurately?
Absolutely.
Right? Okay, go ahead.
I recently read a book called Necessary Endings.
Mhm.
It's about Ecclesiastes 3 and the cycles
Okay.
of life, of sowing and reaping. And there's this analogy of what it takes to care for a rose bush.
Okay.
And the seasons, and different seasons, different tasks are needed, different things are required for the survival of the rose bush. What's so beautiful, I read it and I said, this should be learning for children.
Yes.
I'm getting it now. Took a long time for me to awaken to realize these boundaries that we both were talking about earlier. They're in the context of seasons. They're in different seasons. Different things are needed. And the boundaries are set based on what is best for your survival and thriving. Rooted to thrive. I'm thinking about you're rooted
Yes.
to thrive. And what it takes for those roots to thrive is having a very clear understanding of the seasons of life. What is needed at different times?
Mhm.
What needs to end in our lives? That's the pruning
Yes.
phase. The growth requires the pruning. So yes, I look forward to, in this book, definitely invoking and integrating the wisdom across so many different traditions and people who have contributed to our understanding of self-care for DEI leaders.
Yes.
Less is more.
Mm.
Sometimes it's not about adding on to the plate. Sometimes it's about taking off the plate and doing, looking at what we already have and appreciating it at another level and helping it to grow. So there's so many different directions you can go. But I think that the few things that we talked about today are life transforming.
Yes. Yes. And when you transform your life, in the effort to have peace, to have contentment, to have, and like peace does not mean that the absence of problems. That's
Right.
just life, right? But when you're
Right.
seeking a life that serves you and others well, especially, right? We know that the people who do this kind of work, right? You talked about self-care for DEI leaders in particular. These are people who are seeking to help others. We have to center ourselves, not to be selfish, but center ourselves to give more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that loud and clear from you. Dr. Campbell, Angela, it has been wonderful talking with you. I wonder if you had any last thing, anything that's on your heart that you want to share before we go. Please share that. I'm going to give you some time because I know I just sprung that on you. Yeah, please just share. Any
Just
final?
in closing, yes. Just in closing, I just want to say, good doctor, what you've brought in this platform is part of the transformation of the planet through elevating the consciousness of the people on this planet. And that is the essential work at this time. We have to awaken, we have to be conscious. In the Presence Power for Success model that I'm developing, I do have a portion for DEI leaders called Be Idea. DEI has been under such attack that I said, let me move these little letters around. And other people, I think the government has also talked about idea for inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. And I was like, be idea. Be the idea that comes to you and comes through you. Be inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. Be is belonging. Belong to the idea, starting with yourself. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. So the being has to precede the doing.
Yes. Yes.
And with that, I say thank you so much for giving me a space and the time to commune with you. This has been glorious for me.
Oh.
I feel amazing on top of the world being in your space and being on this platform with you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so very much. I am so honored that was powerful. And I just want to thank you for being so generous. Right? That's how I know you, right? Like I know you as a generous person with your time, with what you know. I always wonder when people say, "Oh, I'm not going to share this or share that with people," their slides or their, whatever it is that they have to offer. It's like, well, what good is it if you don't share it with people? I know people get concerned about people taking their ideas and so on and so forth, but it's like, yeah, nobody can deliver it like you, right? Like nobody can deliver it like uniquely like you. So whatever is out there, that's why I've opened up, right? I'm like, whatever we put out there, you take it, for what you can learn from it. Listen, I'm learning from other people all the time. I've taken some more advice today from this conversation with you. I'm incorporating into my life.
That's what it's there for. I mean, our gifts are to be given away.
Yes.
We're here this long on the planet. We're only here this long.
Yes.
give yourself away, but do it from a place of wholeness and joy, not from pain or suffering or inadequacy or lack. When we're whole, we're connected to the source where all things flow.
Yes.
You can give it away and you'll still have plenty for yourself.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you once again. Now, is there a way people can find you after this episode?
Yes. There are multiple ways to find me. I have a website, Presence Power for Success, where people can contact me through the website. People can also contact me directly on my website, Presence Power for Success @gmail.com. So that's Presence Power FOR, Presence Power for Success @gmail.com.
Yeah.
The website, Presence Power for Success.
Right, excellent. We'll have those in the show. We'll have those in the show notes as well. So
Okay.
people to read it. Thank you again and
Thank
again.
you so much.
Yes, and I want to say thank you to everyone who stopped by. Please leave a comment and share this episode. And again, thank you so much for listening to Rooted to Thrive.